On today's World Insight with Tian Wei, the W11 buying bonanza. How does booming online shopping reflect on Chinese society? And 2019 saw the hottest month ever recorded. Where will we find leadership to tackle climate change?
If we don't prioritize it, climate will come knocking on everybody's door.
And here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live on CGTN from Beijing. We begin today's show here in China, where consumers have once again outspent themselves during the country's most spectacular day of online shopping, Double 11. The two biggest platforms, Alibaba and JD.com, both reported sales exceeding 200 billion yuan, big jumps from last year. Before we unpack this shopping frenzy going on in this country, let's take a closer look at the annual event.
Buy, buy, buy is the gospel for W11, the world's biggest online shopping festival. As the clock struck 12 on November 11th, millions around China pressed the button, place order with rehearsed swiftness. In the first hour, sales on the platform reached $12 billion, a number equivalent to the country of Madagascar's GDP in 2018. At the end of the 24-hour extravaganza, Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba reported a new record-setting total sales of $38.3 billion. JD.com followed with $29.2 billion, up 30%. In comparison, Americans spent less than $8 billion on Amazon's Cyber Monday in 2018. This explains why, despite the ongoing China-U.S. trade row, international brands have only shown increased enthusiasm to connect with the market in the East, learning ways to get into Chinese shoppers' hearts and pockets. As cheers for sales subdued, concerns are reflected upon. On the environment, billions of online orders will create many parcels waiting to be disposed. Some also question if the complex promotion rules are not just confusing, but fooling consumers. And lastly, the metaphysical contemplation of whether happiness can be bought. Double 11 was invented a decade ago by an Alibaba executive to play with the idea of Singles Day. 10 years later, sales figures have skyrocketed, but the loneliness might still linger.
For more discussion on Singles Day or Double 11 Day shopping frenzy here in China, I'm joined in New York by Anthony Chen, former Chase chief economist at JP Morgan. In Shanghai, we have Professor Jeffrey Townsend, who from the Guanghua School of Management from Peking University. Last but not least, in Beijing, Zhang Gong, professor from University of International Business and Economics based in Beijing. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. May I ask who shopped online during China's double single day or Double 11 Day? Shall I ask John? John, did you do that?
I am very proud to announce that I didn't do any shopping.
Oh, you're not contributing, not that much. What about you, Jeffrey?
It's too busy.
Well, I was actually in Hangzhou with Alibaba Management, so I actually spent some time with via the live streamer.
Yeah,
so I
but
was
what
kind
about
of,
money?
involved
Did
in
you
a
spend
little
online?
bit. Now, I'm pretty cheap. I don't spend much money.
Okay, let me also go to Anthony. What about you from the U.S.? Did you also feel the heat coming all the way across the Pacific?
Absolutely, and in fact I did shop because 2 weeks ago I was speaking at an IPO conference in Shenzhen, and everybody was very excited about Singles Day coming, so I think it was contagious. So I made it a point to order stuff online on China's Singles Day.
Right, without really going all the way into details about what exactly you ordered online, gentlemen. So let me ask you, putting jokes aside, you know, people talk about the status of the Chinese economy. Obviously, the numbers are quite impressive. From Alibaba, 268.4 billion. Did I recite that right? And also from Jingdong or JD.com is also more than 200 billion. Impressive numbers really behind it. What does that say, Professor Townsend?
Well, I mean, it sort of puts to rest a couple ideas like Chinese consumer spending is slowing down in a major way, or that the U.S. trade situation is, making American companies less excited about this. Some of the biggest winners over the last 24 hours have been American companies: Apple, Nike, Adidas. And American companies were, I think, the second, most successful companies participating in this. So it's all, it's all guns blazing, and it's all forward.
Interesting. Did you take a look at the numbers, Mr. Chan? What have you figured out about the status of the economy, and who are the winners mostly yesterday?
Well, I think that when you look at these numbers, not only is it the second consecutive year of very impressive sales, but it really tells you that the Chinese consumer is quite resilient despite all the noise that we hear about trade uncertainty, about slowing economic growth globally. The Chinese consumer is still quite resilient. And by the way, I should mention that we see similar trends in the United States. So far, both economies are being supported by consumers. And more importantly, in China, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that the economy is moving more and more towards being a more consumer-driven economy. And these numbers certainly illustrate that.
We're playing now some of the B-rolls, how like yesterday, last night was like when the numbers were revealed. Of course, Jeffrey, you were there in Alibaba with all the colleagues over there looking at the miracle. But for now, I want to go to you, Professor Gong. Some of this has a lot to do with how technology is being applied in the process. Great online activity, as we all know, demands quality tech support. In 2019, Alibaba said that their cloud computing system dealt with 544,000 orders every second at its peak, 1,360 times the number in 2009. If you look at the graphics over here, it's quite impressive. A lot of numbers, but what is really here at the stake, John?
Well, in terms of order handling capacity, certainly Alibaba has a lot of experience. As a matter of fact, not many people know that Alibaba is also China's largest cloud computing player. Right. It has a huge market in that business. It's probably has more profitable than its online business, e-commerce business. So, Alibaba is not just e-commerce company. It's also a technology company these days. It offers a service to business customers. So, its ability to handle these orders is not so surprising to me. It's especially operating in China as the largest e-commerce company. A huge number of orders. China's e-commerce has grown to about 20% of total retail sales, and Alibaba probably occupies about 70% of the market. Right. So we're talking about around 15% of a consumer market consisting of 1.5 or 1.4 billion people.
After
That's
this
a lot of orders.
big advertisement for Alibaba. Well, the reason why we mention Alibaba a lot is because Alibaba was the quote-unquote the official inventor of this so-called double single day sales promotion. But if you look at that, it's now become a national campaign. So, Mr. Chen, let me go to you about that. How do you see these kind of sales campaign work, whether it's in China or in the United States during Christmas, before Thanksgiving, things like that? Is this going to be sustainable?
I think it is, because not only in China, but also certainly in America, and I've seen this firsthand, when more and more people reach some sort of a critical mass of things that people are doing, everybody else wants to join in. When you ask the question, did you shop on Singles Day? When people ask the question, did you shop on Prime Day for Amazon? Everybody wants to say yes, and so they almost shop on Prime Day because they know they're going to be asked, and they don't want to be left out of this process. So the more this builds, the more momentum it continues. So I suspect that online shopping will continue to grow moving forward. Now, we do see some slight wrinkles in the trends. Gen Zs, for example, now there's some talk that they also like to visit the brick-and-mortar stores. But by and large, that trend is pretty well entrenched, that more and more people are getting excited about ordering online. And why not take advantage of it?
Professor Thompson, is it more a trend or is it more a fad?
I think, on the consumer side, especially Chinese consumers, they change so quickly, right? I mean, shopping online, even in a big festival like Singles Day, is very different now than it was 3 to 4 years ago. It's a lot more about entertainment. It's a lot more about having fun, about watching live streaming, about chatting, not so much about let's just get discounts. I mean, it's moved well beyond that. But on the flip side is the fact that this is actually an incredibly important day for merchants and brands, where they can roll out new products, find new customers, get a huge amount of data in one move that informs a lot of their strategy. So it's kind of a huge event for merchants as well, and that's not a fad. That's, you know, pretty key to their strategies.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Gong, that it's going to be part of the business culture, it's also going to be part of the, you know, society culture to entertain and also buy at the same time?
Well, I think for a long time, the online platform is indeed trying very hard to deliver kind of a consumer experience that is sort of comparable to the online, to the offline brick-and-mortar stores. I think if you ask me, this trend is going to continue.
Is it because of your generation you're making that remark, or is it really economist judgment?
Well, I think it's more from economists. I mean, I'm thinking about equilibrium. I mean, the trade-off between online stores and also brick-and-mortar stores, even from a vendor's perspective, there got to be equilibrium there. I mean, these two platforms, actually, in my opinion, are quite complementary. I mean, the brick-and-mortar stores have the advantages, the things they can do that the online platform cannot do, and the other way around as well. So I think, you know, in the end, it's going to be some kind of equilibrium where the vendors, the brand owners would like to have both platforms.
Right. Well, if you think about the double Singles Day, kind of tongue twister in a way, but Professor Townsend, one of the things people talk about is its speed. If you look at the delivery service, hundreds of millions of packages being ordered and delivered on one day, and more to come if you look at the services. But the question really also is about, you know, cash flow and sustainability issues. Obviously, the speed is impressive, but all the packaging, all the delivery, all of this takes enormous amount of resources for a time when sustainability is a big issue for China and the others as well. How do you look at the efficiency when all of these factors are being counted in?
Yeah, I think if you look at sort of the big themes for this year's Singles Day, one of the big four that Alibaba was talking about was green logistics. And I mean, I basically heard them speak very openly about this, that they need to be proactive and not reactive in this space. So, you know, on November 20th, there's the recycling day. And there's this movement towards, you know, sort of recycling as a packaging. Everyone knows the packaging is a problem. It's just too many packages moving, piling up. So they appear to be trying to take a leadership role in this, and I think this Singles Day was their first sort of big move in that regard. I think we're going to see a lot more over the next 12 months on the whole sustainability question.
But of course, Alibaba is only one of those players, Professor Gong. There are many other players. Whether they will follow the trend, the so-called tech for good, whether they are going to take a look at the sustainable development branch of the whole campaign, that is still a question mark.
Oh yeah, I think other vendors, other platform owners, say JD.com and other Pinduoduo, for example, they're also going to follow this trend. I think you're raising a very fundamental question. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about the trade-off, the distribution model, right? The traditional model, you have a middleman, you have a big mall there, and people go there. So it's an aggregation function. Then you distribute to the end users. Now it's more of like a one-to-end model. You send packages. So what is the trade-off there? Well, I mean, this is one thing that at the surface it looks like the online platform is sort of wasteful, but I think the online platform has another very important function we haven't talked about. That is what's called C2M. In other words, it enables a customized, also personalized order.
We all know that, but the question really is about sustainability here. We all know about online shopping's advantages. So, Mr. Chan, what about for that? How is that likely to be portrayed and debated, do you think, in societies? Particularly in a fast-moving society in China, where some of the ideas now are becoming even more prominent than just goods itself.
Well, I have no doubt that sustainability will, in fact, be an important theme here in the United States. You're hearing more and more noise that instead of sending orders in several small or large packages, they're going to try to aggregate all the orders of a consumer to make them more efficient and put them maybe in one delivery or one package. The recycling is another aspect of that.
That's
But
right.
I think every aspect of our society is in fact going to start to take these things into account, because sustainability is not just something that impacts the online business, it impacts other lines of
That's
business.
true.
And in terms of the other issue before, about whether this is a trend or a fad, I think that the online companies want to continue to grow their business, and so they will have to continue to reinvent themselves,
Yeah.
and whether they have to put more entertainment this year or next year, or do something else to entice the consumer to continue to buy. At the end of the day, these online companies want more sales, and they will do whatever it takes to generate those additional sales.
Well said, but if you look at the future, what is going to be the symbol of, the Singles Day eventually? Settle down in China's consumer culture. There has been, at a certain development stage of societies, so-called the consumerism vis-a-vis, the progress of the society and different priorities of the society at different times. Professor Townsend, about that, you've been living in China for a long time. You've been doing research about the younger generation as well over the past few decades. Tell me more about your thoughts about the rising consumerism and China's search for different priorities at different times, particularly now.
Right. I mean, we go back 10 years, and this was a lot about buying good stuff at a good price. I mean, it was a very simple transaction online, even at Singles Day. And then it became more about experience, having fun, a lot of content, KOLs, and more it's about improving your life. And it's this idea of creating a digital lifestyle, which involves buying things, seeing things, having experiences, shopping. It's all sort of growing into this aspect of our consumer behavior that it's not really just about buying stuff anymore, even though the GMV numbers are something that people pay a lot of attention to. And I think that's an area where China's leading, because one of the things that happened this year at Singles Day is we saw Southeast Asia participate. There was a gala in Malaysia. There was a gala in Thailand. So this behavior that we're seeing evolve and grow in China, we're also seeing it start to go beyond China. And that's pretty interesting to watch. This type of behavior might become more of a global thing and not just a China type of activity.
Professor Gong, of course, the EWTP has been something advocated by Jack Ma for several years. And now, do you see that is happening around the world? And how is that crystallized by the Singles Day? By the way, what about the earlier question I asked to Mr. Townsend about the future of this trend?
The consumer, well, Alibaba is going to keep expanding. It's going to expand overseas. It's going to expand into countries that it sees an advantage. So there's no stopping of that. I mean, this company is incredibly growing very fast. And I remember, the last quarter number is still something like, annualized growth is about 40%. For such a huge company, it's still growing at that rate.
Yeah.
So I think this trend is going to continue. Now, consumerism itself, I think Adam Smith's a very famous saying, as a country, it's for people, for the individual, probably it's a good idea to save a little bit more. But for a country, if everyone saves like this, it's going to be a disaster. And at the end of the day, economic growth means delivering better life. People need to spend some money. It's good for the economy.
Right.
So as Townsend said very well, that put it very nicely, that as we move into this digital age, the kind of a consumer experience associated with the online platform is something that consumers indeed are looking for.
Mr. Chen, consumerism, you experience that in the American societies, and there's different festivals, but whether that is still, part of a culture that's very much respected at today's time, it's a question mark. What about, you see that trend also going on in China, Professor?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is certainly a big question mark, but I think that the trend of consumerism is going to continue. For example, in the United States, when you look at the age group of 18 to 34 years old, more than half of those individuals don't have a steady, significant other. So they fall into that category of Singles Day. And you can argue that it's something to make them feel good or something to make them feel more social. But with the growth of that group of more and more individuals that can be labeled or categorized as being single, we're going to see this trend picking up outside, because birth rates are going down all over the world, and that means less people getting married and less people having a significant other. So more single people around the world. So it only stands to reason Singles Day is going to catch on.
Well, what can you say? You know, when you have 3 economists on the panel, they're going to say more income, more revenue, it's a better thing.
Well,
but thank you for so much. We are running out of time. We have Anthony Chan, Jeffrey Townsend, and John Gong. Sorry, we're running out of time. Really appreciate it. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. 2019 saw the hottest month ever recorded. Where are we heading for to find the leadership to tackle the climate change? Some answers from the Executive Director of the UN Environmental Program right after this program.
In this episode of Travelogue, Megan and I are on the hunt for great hotel designs. From a cyberpunk supercity to manicured gardens and an ethnic minority village, we'll explore accommodation with an architectural theme that embraces the local identity.
The world is changing fast, taking all our lives with it. But we can change it too, by seeking answers to problems through discussions and debates. On World Insight, I ask direct questions to real people in the know, seek genuine answers, but respect diverse perspectives. Our live global debates tackle the most critical issues head-on. World Insight with Tian Wei go beyond the headlines.
Come back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. We turn to a serious problem the world is facing right now, climate change. Well, that's on the front line a lot, but the worsening side effects of the global warming has stressed the importance of protecting the environment. But against all international pressure last week, the Trump administration officially began its long-announced process of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement by giving written notifications to the UN Secretary General. Climate change and biodiversity are among the top priorities of the UN, though. One of the biggest obstacles is tackling global challenges is the lack of global governance. This is where institutions such as the United Nations Environmental Program will attempt to fill the gap. The organization is led by Inger Andersen. She told me that yes, the house is on fire, and yes, the fight is hard, but a lot is being done, and certainly a lot should be done. Take a look. Ms. Andersen, welcome to CGTN in Beijing.
Thank you so much.
I love this little courtyard of yours.
Isn't it just gorgeous?
It's beautiful. I hope it will be as peaceful as it is, but we have a lot of issues these days.
We do.
Climate change. UNEP's role, Ms. Andersen, has been warning the world about the house on fire. But even after repeated warning, you do not see governments coordinate in the best way. What is your take about the current situation?
Well, we've been warning about the house being on fire because it is. IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, has come out very clearly and indicated that we must take action, that the scenarios against which we are working are scenarios that require us to take action to preserve the nature, to preserve the world as we know it. And IPBES, the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystems, similarly has said that we are standing to lose a million species out of 7.8 million unless we take action. So yes, the house is on fire. In a sense, we've been taking nature for granted. We've assumed that we can put things into the atmosphere, consume and discard our wastes, our carbon, into the atmosphere in such a way that and that nature would continue to absorb it, that the atmosphere would continue to absorb it, which it will not.
But you certainly notice other federal governments, particularly some specific ones, turn away from the issue of climate change. Now, how would you deal with that? I mean, in your position?
I think whilst we certainly have seen some countries having second thoughts, that's actually it's only one country. And
it's not second thought, it's turning away, totally.
So at this point, we have at the same time in all countries massive commitments at the country level, at the city level, at the state level, at the industry level, at the science level. So it's a complex world we live in. And I think if we assume that the world is on a linear path, we have been mistaken.
So, Ms. Andersen, you would assume that countries, governments, civil societies, industries would learn from the best example rather from the worst example. Is that what you would assume would be the case? No. Because sometimes the worst example did lead people to lower places.
What I think we should assume is that this is hard. It's actually not even an assumption, it's a fact. This is hard. And it being hard, therefore, there will be interest. But here's the thing, 10 times as many people in the US work on green renewable energy than work in the coal sector. These people will vote too. These people will have a voice too. These people will engage too. It's a complex situation, but we must understand, and that's why Paris highlights leave no one behind. And in some countries we did leave some people behind. We did not take into account the fact that we needed to make sure that we need to lift people out of poverty, we needed to create jobs for everybody, and the transition is complex.
Sometimes we are confused because there are so many buttons we can push on, and therefore people will say, so which one? I'm losing my direction here. What do you say? Limited resources, limited attention.
4 things. We have to decouple our economy from, on the one hand, growth, which we want, from environmental degradation, circularity. Secondly, we have to decarbonize. We invest in new, renewable, smart energy. Third, we need to detoxify, take the toxicity, the chemicals out of our environment. And fourth, invest in nature. Nature's infrastructure is part of the solution, nature-based solutions. These 4, all of them, at the same time, that's what we need to do. Because we will soon be 10 billion on this good planet. And if we don't, we will find that there will be today 1.3 billion people living in extreme poverty. We need to lift these people out of poverty, but we need to do that without the environmental consequences.
Nature-based solutions has always been one idea that's dear to your heart and your organization. At this point, which stage are we in? What do you think is the most important emphasis now we can push this thing in a more efficient way?
We have 2 billion hectares of degraded land on this planet. 2 billion hectares. We have degraded more land than double the size of China. That land is lying there ready to be taken back into productive use. Think of it. Nature is very forgiving. You invest in nature, nature invests right back in humankind.
We learned that through the smog issue here.
Exactly.
As long as we pay attention to the environment, see, we do have fresh air today.
Indeed. So the first action on nature-based solutions, we put landscapes back into work, degraded land back into working landscapes. That will bring us 4 types of benefits: carbon storage, biodiversity, growth, agriculture, production, timber, what have you, and general well-being. Because when we are in nature, we feel much happier.
It's easier said than done, though, Ms. Andersen, because if you look at just planting the trees, which is also one of the things your organization, UNEP, has been working on, it's one of those branches of solutions only, and yet itself, worldwide, mega project.
Yes, but it's not one project to be done. The beauty of this is that China is already doing it. The beauty of this is Ethiopia is already doing it. The beauty of this is Africa has come together on the Great Green Wall that they are constructing, planting. The beauty of this is that in the Northern Hemisphere, the forests are expanding by themselves. So there's lots that's already happening. What we want is a global effort to ensure that everybody leans in. It can be you in your backyard, or it can be a massive tree planting exercise.
I did my annual tree planting, by the way. There's a campaign going on in China. I always do that every year. Good for me. But, you know, I know you're an optimist because you have to be, and you really need to be in your mission. But at the same time, may I, Ms. Andersen, remind you of the reality that we are struggling with the priorities in the world. Geopolitics, for example, lack of future plan of global governance have made all of us dizzy in a way. So whether environmental protection, climate change will remain on top of the list as a priority as they were 5 years ago, for example, it's a big question mark.
Unfortunately, I would say it is not a question mark, because if we don't prioritize it, climate will come knocking on everybody's door.
But we always want to be firefighters. We never want to think ahead. That's the human nature too.
But you see, the point here is now we are already firefighting. As I said, the house is on fire. And when you are in the fire, with these increasingly hard hits by nature, then we will stay committed.
You're also dealing with a house when the institutions are being questioned and being tumbled. It's not just the...
No, the institutions are not being questioned or tumbled. It's normal that people leave, they get other opportunities, they may get sick. It's a normal situation. The good thing is we are 7 billion plus on this good planet. There are plenty of good people. If I leave my job, there are plenty of good people who can come in my place. Because the UN is strong. We are turning 75 next year. We have been around for a long time, and so we are not going anywhere because member states are committed. So personalities might change, but our mission and our mandate, which is given to us by member states, is given. And it's difficult, it's complicated, there are different views, geopolitics, but there's only one way we can deal with it, and that is a multilateral platform. That is the United Nations, and that's what I work for.
Near horizon 2020, there is an issue about biodiversity. The world was expected to adopt a post-2020 biodiversity international framework. Now, China is also going to host the conference of biodiversity as the host country. Is that possible, that framework?
Of course. Look, in 2010 in Japan, we adopted a 10-year framework referred to as there are 20 targets, referred to as the Aichi targets, where we said by 2020 we will have reached this particular point. The truth is we will not have reached all of the targets of the 2010 framework when we meet in Kunming in Yunnan province in 2020 under the Chinese presidency. And so we have to reflect, why was that?
Why is that, do you think?
Yes, that's what I'm getting to. There are many things that we've learned in this decade. In Paris, what did we learn? We learned that it was no longer enough just having the environment ministers speak about climate. Who did you need? You needed energy, transport, finance, industry, etc. And that was what got the Paris climate deal. So, thinking about biodiversity, what are the drivers of loss? It's agriculture, industry, etc. So we need everybody to be part of the solution, and that is entirely possible. You can do nature-positive agriculture, you can do nature-positive fisheries, nature-positive infrastructure, and it's a lot less expensive than doing much of the chemical agriculture that we do today. So there's some real opportunities, and if we get those next targets right, then when we meet in 2030 to look at where we have come, then we will see that we managed to get more measurable targets and more implementable targets.
Did you just realize, Ms. Andersen, what you have for you already a plan in a way, because you have to engage in that sense all different kinds of organizations within the UN system in order to incorporate all of these important players. But you also have to engage directly with country members of the United Nations, while at the same time engage with the specific area which you are working on a constant basis, the specific counterparts. So that's a very complicated layers of engagement, and you have to do it before the conference begins.
Multilateralism is complex, so let's not oversimplify. I also happen to be the chair of the Environmental Management Group of the United Nations, which brings together the 53 UN agencies, and we've decided that for this coming year we're just going to focus on biodiversity.
Do you talk that way to them during the meetings?
I probably do. I probably do. But we have to focus on biodiversity because we need to support the incoming chair, China, the incoming presidency, and we obviously need to ensure that we have the solutions. The good thing is that there are many other parties that are non-state actors that are leaning in and providing solutions. And so we need to corral all of that energy to ensure that that can be part of the solution in Kunming.
Talking about youth, which I did notice that key word in your earlier answer, but we have also noticed that the youth in at least some economies have been disillusioned. You see what's going on also in the streets in some parts of the world, and they are uncertain about the future. However, this is also the generation of youth that is very passionate about the environment. Just as, you know, a coincidence back in the 60s and 70s, isn't it? So how do you see, you know, the key to engage the youth on the environment issue, on climate change? What about institutional building vis-a-vis just personal enthusiasm?
So I think if you and I think back to when we were young, there is a degree of sense that I need to fix the world because it's not. And I love that. I mean, I just think that the enthusiasm of youth is an important enabler. Now, we also need to base it in science and the realities and all of that. So I think our young people are calling us out. Maybe it can be sounding naive in some quarters, but there's truth in it. And so we need to hear it, and we need to ensure that that voice of clarity, of a child's clarity, is one that we then translate into adults' action. That's what we have to do right now. I had the pleasure and privilege of speaking to students at Tsinghua University, and it was the environmental school, and it was just so impressive to see many young men, but also many, many young women, super engaged and so competent for the next generation of leaders that we will see in this world.
What about China and other developing and emerging economies today on the cause? Who will be the leader or the leading force for the future in this regard? Ms. Andersen.
I mean, I wouldn't want to pick one leader because I'd hope we'll have a chorus of leaders, which I think is what we are beginning to see. You know, Indonesia is speaking up very much on rainforest issues. That's an Indonesia issue as well as other countries, obviously. India has been struggling with air issues and are reaching for solutions, but have made great strides on banning plastic. So each country has seen leaders in the last few years. This country, of course, we're sitting here under a blue sky with clean air in a country that didn't have this 10 years ago. So phenomenal leaning in on clarity of vision. Here we speak about ecological civilization, and we are also having ecology in the garden with some flies. So at any rate, we speak about ecological civilization, which is a beautiful way of saying living in harmony with nature and turning green to gold. So I think these kind of leaders that we're seeing that are speaking to the imperative of environmental stewardship, that's what we need to encourage.
Yeah, but you see also interesting change going on. At the same time, when developing economies are paying more attention to climate change, environmental protection issues, the global supply chain has also been, shall I say, changing as a result of various factors, including geopolitics. So how do you see, Ms. Andersen, that these two combined would eventually work to certain kinds of results for us?
Well, I think you need two things. You need a carrot and you need the stick.
Yes.
And so the carrot is many ways. You and I, we vote with our dollar bills, or when we go shopping, we are voting because we can buy this or we can buy that. Shareholders of companies will demand certain things. Nobody wants to be the shareholder of a dirty company that's poisoning people. And and companies put in place, like in this country, environmental regulations. And we will do this also on the global supply chain, because more and more regulations in countries that are importing parts will be such that they have to have a certain degree of standards of environmental integrity. So I think we will see that these two things, well, we are seeing that these two things are coming together.
And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.